This week, join me as I investigate the most controversial premise of the Da Vinci Code. Did Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene really have a child? And can their bloodline be traced to an ancient line of French royalty called the Merovingians? To unravel the truth from the myths and legends surrounding Dan Brown's amazing story, I'll examine Da Vinci's masterworks, explore caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and extract DNA from a Merovingian queen. My goal? To see if the genetic code of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene can actually be traced. We're digging for the truth, and we're going to extremes to do it.
I think this rope's about to break.
The Da Vinci Code is a global phenomenon, a best-selling book and a major Hollywood production. One aspect of the story which has captured the world's imagination is that the Holy Grail is not a cup used at the Last Supper, but a person named Mary Magdalene. Now, the descendants of Jesus and Mary may still be walking the streets today. Hi, I'm Josh Bernstein. I've come here to Europe to try to separate fact from fiction in this exciting story. If a bloodline from Jesus does exist, then I'm determined to see if DNA science can be used to track it down. But first, I need some background on this fascinating story. The opening scene of the Da Vinci Code is set in Paris, France, and that's a good place to start my investigation. This is the Louvre. This is where the Da Vinci Code starts, in front of one of Da Vinci's masterpieces. Today, the museum's closed, but you and I are going to get a private tour. I'm being shown around by art historian Alice Jouve.
Follow me, I'll show you how to get in.
Okay, private tour, lead on. The mysteries of Da Vinci.
In the Da Vinci Code, the Louvre's curator is murdered in this hall, where they keep the most famous painting in the world.
It's my first time seeing it.
Leonardo da Vinci's paintings have a reputation for mystery.
How great is that?
The Mona Lisa, with her enigmatic smile, may be his best-known portrait. But I'm more interested in two of Da Vinci's other works. According to Dan Brown's book, Da Vinci was privy to a secret that, if revealed, could rock the Christian church, and he hid clues in his paintings.
And this is
The Madonna of
Verax.
right.
So what's the mystery associated with this?
This is a story relating an incident from the apocryphal gospel in which the Holy Family meets John the Baptist during the flight into Egypt. They have all taken refuge in this rocky shelter.
So who's who?
On the left,
Alice tells me that this canvas illustrates a meeting between Jesus and John the Baptist that some believe could have taken place during the flight into Egypt. This journey is mentioned briefly in Matthew's Gospel, but more fully in the apocryphal Gospels not included in the Bible. But Alice also tells me Da Vinci was an innovator. He didn't depict biblical scenes the way his clients were expecting. This painting is very ambiguous. It doesn't make clear who is blessing whom.
And I guess if this were John with Uriel, and that were Jesus with the Virgin Mother, which makes sense to me,
Right.
then could one say that John is blessing Jesus?
That's possible.
But why not? Why depict it so that they're mismatched?
Well, you'd have to ask Leonardo.
But Da Vinci's most controversial work is, if anything, more ambiguous still. It was painted on the wall of a convent in Milan, Italy, and depicts the Last Supper. According to the Da Vinci Code, the person sitting on Jesus' right, generally assumed to be the young and unbearded apostle John, is actually Mary Magdalene. Even more remarkably, the book tells us she's given pride of place at the Last Supper because she is Jesus' wife. Another claim, Christ's cup of wine, what we now call the Holy Grail, is nowhere to be seen. And according to the book, the cup's absence is part of an elaborate code left by Leonardo. The code's greatest secret? That the blood of Christ is contained not in a cup, but in the womb of Mary Magdalene. According to the Da Vinci Code, Leonardo knew all this because he was a Grand Master of the Priory of Sion, a secret society sworn to guard the divine bloodline. I need to know more about the mysteries surrounding the Priory of Sion. I'm heading for the south of France to the small hilltop village of Rennes-le-Château. It's rumored that this is the place where in the 19th century the secrets of the Priory of Sion were first exposed. The man who blew their cover? One Béranger Saunière.
Saunière was the parish priest of Rennes-le-Château. He was not a wealthy man, but suddenly and mysteriously he came into money. Lots of money. And no one could figure out where it came from.
So here we are.
Researcher Tuvia Fogel is showing me what Saunière did with his mysterious fortune.
So here is the Magdalene Tower, perhaps the most famous of the things Saunière built here at the end of the 19th century. It looks like a 15th century fortress, but it was in fact his library. He kept hundreds of books in this room here and spent days studying.
And he actually built this from scratch.
Oh yeah, there was nothing there before.
Well, where did he get the money to do extensive renovations or construction like this?
Some people say he was selling masses. Some people say he was paid by European nobility to find documents concerning their lineage. But he got money from somewhere, and it was, for the time, pretty big money too.
Tuvia also tells me of another theory, that Saunière's fortune came in the form of hush money, paid to keep knowledge of the divine bloodline under wraps. But when Saunière spent this fortune on building projects, one person was evidently at the forefront of his mind, Mary Magdalene.
Isn't it a bit odd that he would have built a tower to a woman that the church viewed as a prostitute?
The whole of the south of France is covered in churches dedicated to Magdalene. It's a very widespread cult.
Gotcha.
Tuvia explains that it's not just the tower that Saunière dedicated to Mary Magdalene. He also named the church after her. Béranger Saunière did all of this after he allegedly discovered some documents in a hollow pillar. Apparently, they revealed a completely different, shocking history of Christianity, and detailed a bloodline that stretched from Jesus Christ to a 6th and 7th century French royal dynasty, the Merovingians. But unlike many of the claims in the Da Vinci Code, the Merovingians really did exist.
Was there anything else in this church that was discovered or hidden?
Well, actually, 4 years ago, there was a radar scan carried out, and right down the aisle here, in the middle of the church, the radar said that there is a hollow. It would seem that at least 4 or 5 meters from the altar to where you are, there is a crypt underneath here, which wouldn't be strange. Almost half of medieval churches in Europe have crypts below them.
You're saying radar tests confirm that there's an empty space below me right now?
Exactly. And it's very likely that it is the burial place of some Merovingian nobles, or who knows, maybe even a Merovingian king.
But how did Mary Magdalene become linked with the 6th century French royal family? And could that link be a genetic one? My quest for the truth behind the Da Vinci Code has brought me to the Mediterranean coast of France. Dan Brown's novel makes an extraordinary claim, that Jesus Christ was married to Mary Magdalene, and that their bloodline can be traced through a royal family of France. Could such a remarkable story possibly be true?
Whoa! Welcome to the Camargue, a place world famous for its wild horses. This place is also known as the point of arrival of some very special travelers. Yeah!
According to local legend, it was here that Mary Magdalene and her companions arrived by boat from the Holy Land. According to this legend, they were fleeing the Romans, and they had good reason to escape. Mary had with her a child, none other than the daughter of Jesus Christ. This church dominates the town center of Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer. dedicated to Mary Magdalene and her fellow traveler, Mary Salome.
Oh, look, the two Marys.
The two Marys.
Author Tim Wallace Murphy is here to tell me about the legends that still surround this church.
And today, this church is dedicated to the two Marys.
So the plaque on the outside would have us believe, and so the Catholic Church would wish us to believe. But in popular imagination, and particularly amongst the worldwide gypsy community, it's dedicated to the child Sarah, who is celebrated very strongly in the crypt. And as you can see from the candles here, this is the real spiritual heart of this church. And it's all about veneration of this lady.
This is Sarah.
According to church tradition, she's the servant of Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. According to another tradition, she's a child of Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Well, how likely is it that Jesus would have had a child?
Oh, it's certain. There can't be any doubt about it. There are three Jewish traditions which come together which reinforce the point. First of all male Jews had to marry and beget children. The Lord had said, "Go forth and multiply," and the Jewish people were strict observers of the law. Then, as a rabbi, he would have had children and been married, because he's addressed as rabbi in the New Testament documentation.
What about the idea of this line being traceable today?
It almost certainly could be, were it not for a bureaucratic gap in the records between the time of the fall of the Roman Empire and, shall we say, the 10th century. But the line is traceable. There's the theory that it came in through the Merovingian line. Now, Dan Brown used that in the Da Vinci Code.
Most biblical scholars do not share Tim's certainties about Jesus' marital status, but nobody doubts the existence of the Merovingian royal line. Their well-documented rule lasted for centuries.
Well, this could be very interesting. I want you to work with me on this hypothetical. If Jesus were married, as heretical as that might sound, if he and Mary had a child, if that child were somehow transported to southern France, and if that child were married into the Merovingian dynasty, could traces of that royal lineage still be found today?
There's only one way to find out. I'm going to meet Europe's leading expert on tracing ancient DNA. I want to run a 2,000-year trace on a bloodline running from the Holy Land to Europe. Question is, can it be done? Here at Leuven University in Belgium, Professor Jean-Jacques Cassiman has studied the DNA of French royalty before. He recently settled a long-running dispute by proving, with DNA, that a supposed long-lost son of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI was nothing of the sort. He's the perfect scientist to help me on my quest.
I'm exploring the Da Vinci Code and the theory of a bloodline running from Jesus through the Merovingians to today.
Yes.
And what I want to understand is what genetic science can do to aid me on this quest.
Well, you see that the frequency of some types of DNA differs from one community, one population to another, and that's what we're looking for. What is the frequency of particular DNA profiles in the community from which Mary Magdalene originated?
So you have a database of markers from people from all over the world.
Yes.
And within that database, you can even say, these people come from the Middle East.
Yes.
So looking at a realistic quest, where would I want to go? What would I need to bring back to you?
If you cannot find Maria Magdalena, the best alternative is to find bones, remnants of somebody who might be a descendant of Maria Magdalena, so that we can examine the bones.
Jean-Jacques tells me that if I can get a bone sample from someone who is allegedly part of this bloodline, then his lab can search for any intact DNA. This involves grinding the bones and then extracting and amplifying any DNA still present in the fragments. He explains that only mitochondrial DNA is found in very old remains like these. It's a type of DNA that can remain intact for thousands of years.
So let's go with the assumption that I somehow am able to get a mitochondrial DNA sample.
Yes.
Then what? How does that help me prove whether this person is related to Jesus or not?
Well, the DNA will not tell you anything by itself. You have to compare it to something. and taking samples from the community to which they belonged. And then you look at the probability that the origin is the same of the skeleton and the people you sampled.
If the theories of the Da Vinci Code are to be proven true, then I would expect to find Middle Eastern DNA markers in the Merovingian DNA.
Yes, we compare it to population, for example, a Middle Eastern population, and see if this could fit or not.
Okay, so the best thing I can do, who knows if I can, but like my goal is to determine which Merovingian king or queen can provide us with his or her DNA.
Yeah, fine. Good luck.
Thank you. So I'm going to hop a train back to Paris, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay.
Great.
Good luck.
Thanks.
A long-dead monarch could hold the key to the core mystery of the Da Vinci Code. But what are the odds of finding a royal skeleton 1,500 years after the fact?
To explore this possibility, I've come just a bit north of Paris to the spectacular Basilica of Saint-Denis. It was here, beneath these very stones, in this ancient floor, where archaeologists made an amazing discovery.
I'm meeting Daniel Perrier, one of France's leading experts on the Merovingians. He tells me that this is not just a place of worship, but the burial site of French royalty, stretching back to the first dynasty, the one I'm interested in, the Merovingians.
Cool.
Normally people are not allowed.
Oh, very cool. Special access.
It's an adventure.
Oh, wow, look at this.
These are the sarcophagi. About 60 Merovingian tombs.
60?
Yes, 60. All aristocrats.
Look at all these sarcophagi. It's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
This place is big.
Yes, it is. And part of it is still not excavated. See, beyond this wall there, there are other sarcophagi waiting to be excavated.
How do you know who's on the inside?
Actually, you don't know.
You don't know?
No, you don't know.
All these Merovingians, then we don't know their names.
Yes, because there wasn't any inscription on the lids. Yet, we do have one exception, a queen called Arigonde, who was identified thanks to her jewelry.
Really? So you know who she was because of the jewelry she had?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Where are the bones now?
They're in the Museum for National Archaeology.
Is there any way I could see those bones?
Oh, yes, sure.
Really?
Yes. No problem.
All right.
Queen Aragon's sarcophagus is now upstairs with the rest of French royalty. But her body is on the other side of Paris at the National Antiquities Museum in the town of Saint-Germain-en-Laye.
The remains of Queen Aragon could be a vital clue. What genetic insights can we gain from the bones of a Merovingian queen?
In the laboratory of the French Antiquities Museum, Daniel is going to show me the remains of Queen Aragon.
Very cool.
She's the only positively identified Merovingian queen ever discovered.
This is Queen Aragonde.
And you mentioned that we know who she was because of some jewelry.
Yes, we know she was Queen Aragonde because of this ring. You can still read Arigondis Reginae, which in Latin means Queen Aragonde. This Queen Aragonde.
Daniel tells me that we know a fair bit about Queen Aragonde from ancient texts. She was the wife of King Lothair, and they lived and ruled in the middle of the 6th century. It's from Aragon that all of the Merovingian royal family descended. The Da Vinci Code claims that the bloodline extended right through the Merovingian line. If so, Aragon's DNA is a good place to look for signs of Middle Eastern ancestry.
Daniel, have any DNA tests been done yet on this body?
Unfortunately not. So far it has not been possible.
What if I can make it possible?
Well, that would be amazing, really.
So if there's a way that I can arrange for a proper DNA test to be done on this, what do we need to do? What can I test?
DNA testing implies destroying some objects. So maybe just a tooth.
I can take a tooth?
Yes.
Okay, so one tooth.
No DNA tests have ever been conducted on a French monarch of this antiquity before.
I'll put it in the box.
We're the first to be allowed to do it.
Nice.
Maybe
This is more than just serious science. It's also a privilege. According to geneticist Jean-Jacques Casimir, if the bloodline of Jesus entered the Merovingian line, then Queen Aragon's DNA could contain a marker indicating Middle Eastern origin. What I need to find out next is which community living today has the closest DNA profile to Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Jesus' spirit may have been divine, but Jesus' body was definitely human. So perhaps I can learn more about that bloodline by studying the community he came from. It's time to visit his ancient homeland, the state of Israel.
I'm on the trail of the Da Vinci Code. I need to find out more about Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Could they really have had a child, and could their bloodline still endure? According to the Bible, this is the last place they were both seen alive, Jerusalem. I've enlisted the help of biblical scholar Kent Dobson. He's here in Israel to study the early Christian church and biblical archaeology. Kent tells me that the Garden Tomb is the reputed last resting place of Jesus' earthly body.
Many people believe that this is the place of Jesus' resurrection.
Wow.
In the late 1800s, a Protestant named Charles Gordon came here and identified this tomb as Jesus' tomb. Let's have a look.
All right.
Whether this is the actual tomb is still a matter of controversy. Likewise, the location of Jesus' appearance after his burial remains the subject of debate. But what no one disputes is the Gospel's account of who first witnessed the resurrected Jesus. It was Mary Magdalene.
So Kent, walk me through the steps immediately after the resurrection.
Okay. Well, according to the Gospels, a group of women come to the tomb of Jesus, probably to mourn. And according to the Gospel of John specifically, it's Mary Magdalene who has that first conversation with Jesus here in the garden. At first, she doesn't recognize Jesus. She thinks he's the gardener. But over the course of time, she realizes who she's talking to and utters Rabboni, probably in Aramaic, meaning my rabbi.
Wow. Well, what's the significance that the first person to see Jesus after the resurrection is first a woman and second Mary Magdalene?
Well, it's definitely intriguing because this is a relatively patriarchal society, and you would think if you wanted to write an authoritative account of a dramatic event like this, you would want the witnesses to be male. And in this case, they're all women. In fact, they go to the disciples, and the disciples don't even believe them. So it is interesting.
Well, could this be what Dan Brown is calling the sacred feminine, the prominence of the women in this culture?
It does appear that the Gospels are lifting up the position of women as followers of Jesus, giving them an important voice and an important place. And if Jesus did in fact have female disciples, that would make him much more of a revolutionary, because rabbis didn't typically have female disciples.
It's amazing that in such male-dominated times, this pivotal moment of Christian history was witnessed by a woman. But what's even more amazing is that this is the last time we hear of Mary Magdalene in the authorized Bible. Through the ages, many legends have evolved about what happened to Mary after the crucifixion. According to one legend, Joseph of Arimathea, the owner of the Garden Tomb, spirited her out of Israel immediately after Jesus' death. He was fearful that the same authorities who crucified Jesus would also go after anyone associated with him, especially the one person said to be the closest to him, his wife, Mary Magdalene. This is the version of events described in the Da Vinci Code.
But is there any evidence to support this theory? According to the Da Vinci Code, clues to the true story of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and the real Holy Grail were found here in the Qumran caves in the Judean desert. So I've come for a closer look.
A Jewish sect, the Essenes, lived in the hills above the Dead Sea around the time of Jesus. They are the likely authors of a collection of parchments called the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Da Vinci Code claims that these documents, along with others found in Egypt, tell an alternative version of the events following the death of Jesus.
now, the rappel. How far down is it?
It's about 160 feet.
Ooh, good. All right.
It should be fun.
Yeah. All right. See you at the bottom.
It seems that the Essenes wanted to save their writings and their version of history somewhere their Roman enemies wouldn't find them.
Good to go.
And they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The Dead Sea Scrolls weren't discovered until 1947. I want to see for myself where these documents were hidden and how they could have remained a secret for 2 millennia.
I'm amazed at how remote some of these caves are. I mean, they didn't have climbing gear, and yet some of these scrolls were found in the most tucked away, remote areas of Qumran. You gotta wonder how they even got to them.
The Da Vinci Code states that the documents found in these caves reveal what happened to Mary Magdalene after Jesus' crucifixion. But what do these documents really say about Jesus and Mary? There are hundreds of caves scattered around the mountains above Qumran. Yet it wasn't until the last century that people began to explore them. Most proved empty, but remarkable manuscripts and fragments of manuscripts were found in 11 of them.
Oh, very cool. What?
Yeah, this is some Second Temple period pottery.
Nice. 2,000 years it's been sitting here. That's so cool. All right, let's go in. See how far back it goes. Wow. Dusty. Nice. Let's go for it. Wow. This goes back quite a ways, huh?
Yeah.
Look at those bats.
Yeah, you see them?
Yeah. That's so cool. They're just hanging out. Wow. And what's with the black ceiling?
The black ceiling is probably from Bedouin shepherds. Sometimes shepherds will come here and spend the night or have a fire. And in fact, that's how the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, by Bedouin shepherds. A shepherd had thrown a stone into a cave and heard some pottery break. And so he came back the next day and sure enough found a series of broken jars and some scrolls and some fragments of scrolls. And he then in turn sold them on the antiquity market, trying to make a few dollars.
What do the scrolls actually tell us about Jesus and Mary?
Well, in terms of Jesus, there's no mention of Jesus, no mention of Mary, no mention of John the Baptist, no mention of Christianity or Jesus' disciples. The Dead Sea Scrolls are silent in that respect.
Really? Nothing about Jesus or Mary exists anywhere in those texts?
Nothing.
Nothing about alternative theories, about this bloodline, about a relationship between Jesus and Mary?
Nothing. Completely silent.
It's great to see where the famous Dead Sea Scrolls were found. But for me, it's a dead end. This part of the Da Vinci Code is definitely fiction. According to Kent, the Dead Sea Scrolls don't say anything about Jesus or an alternative Grail story. However, Kent tells me that the other documents mentioned in the Da Vinci Code, the ones found in Egypt, do exist and mention Jesus and Mary Magdalene. These alternative versions of the Christian story are called the Gnostic Gospels. There's even a Gospel of Mary. Frustratingly for scholars, though, most of it is missing. Still, other references do exist. The most compelling is the Gnostic Gospel of Philip, which alludes to a relationship between Jesus and Mary that's more intimate than anything contained in the Bible. One passage says Jesus often kissed Mary on the... but there's a hole in the manuscript, so we don't know where. It's certainly intriguing, and I'm determined to find out more about Jesus and Mary Magdalene and the community they lived in. I'm on the trail of the amazing claim made in the Da Vinci Code that a bloodline stretches from Jesus through a French royal family to today. I've taken a sample from the remains of the only known Merovingian queen, and I've sent them to the DNA lab for testing. I now need to get a Middle Eastern DNA sample to compare with that of the Queen. Biblical scholar Kent Dobson is helping me trace the closest living descendants of the community Jesus and Mary Magdalene came from. First, Mary Magdalene. For someone who witnessed such a pivotal moment in Christian history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we know surprisingly little about her. In fact, the only real clue we have is her surname, Magdalene. Scholars think it means from Magdala.
Okay, what is this place?
Well, it's not a typical tourist site, that's for sure.
There's no modern settlement called Magdala, but Kent has brought me to some ruins off limits to most people, near the town of Migdal in the Galilee.
Special permission today.
Wow. What do these pillars tell us?
Well, these pillars tell us that this site goes back to the 1st century, the time period of Jesus. Much of the architecture you see here is Roman.
Look at this.
Yeah.
What about the pottery here? Are these from the same period?
Sure. Pull some up. Just little pottery fragments. You find these all over. It's almost like the litter of the ancient world.
Kent says what he really wants me to see are the remains of this ancient building.
Believe it or not, this might actually be a synagogue from the 1st century. You see, we've got steps, but potentially benches, and relatively small, a series of pillars. You can imagine these pillars holding up a roof.
And do we know what this city was?
We do. At least it's likely. This is the village of Magdala.
Oh, this is the Magdala.
This place is all that's left of the town of Magdala. Although little is known about Mary Magdalene, it seems likely that this was her home. And there's no doubt that Jesus lived somewhere in this area.
Every scholar almost unanimously agrees that Jesus was here, in Galilee. If this was indeed a synagogue, it talks about Jesus going to the towns and villages, preaching in the synagogues, then maybe he was here. He certainly passed by this town or went through this town many times.
Well, then following Jesus as a thread to this bloodline, what can you tell me about his community?
The synagogue was a very central aspect to Jewish life. It's where they prayed, it's where they had community.
Kent explains that although Jesus would have spoken Hebrew in the synagogue, the language that he'd have spoken to Mary Magdalene would have been Aramaic.
Can we get a sense of Jesus' community through his language?
Look, language is culture. It's geography and it's language. Definitely, if you want to understand a culture, you have to dig into their language a little bit.
Arabic is now the dominant language of the Middle East. But for nearly 2,000 years, it was Aramaic, the legacy of the world's first great empire, the Assyrians. Today, Aramaic has almost died out. But Kent says that one of the oldest Christian communities, the Syriac Orthodox Church, still speaks this mother tongue. Maybe language can lead us to the closest genetic link to Jesus today. We now know that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were members of the community here on the shores of Lake Galilee.
The problem with that is that over 2,000 years have passed since Jesus walked along these shores, and the community here has dispersed. But perhaps language is one way to gain access to that community. And if that's the case, then Aramaic may be my next lead.
And it's a lead that has brought me back to Jerusalem to track down the people who still speak Aramaic.
Welcome to the market of the old city, where everything is for sale. Every price is negotiable.
But it's religion, not trade, for which Jerusalem is renowned. Sacred to 3 of the world's religions, there are countless communities of worship here. But one of them is key to my quest. The Syriac Orthodox Church still uses Aramaic in both its liturgy and daily lives. The Syriac monastery of St. Mark is tucked away in the back streets of the old city. I've arranged to meet the Archbishop inside. As we enter, the Archbishop tells me that the Syriac Orthodox Church can trace its history to the very dawn of the Christian faith.
It was house of Mark.
They believe Jesus' disciple Mark lived on this site, and that the Last Supper took place right here. All the writing in this church is in Aramaic, including their Bible.
Wow. It's read right to left, yeah?
Like Hebrew and like Arabic.
It's sort of a mixture between the two, it looks. Yeah. Could you read something to me in Aramaic?
Yes.
The Archbishop offers to recite the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic.
لخي ملكوتا وحيلوت شبحتا العالم علمين آمين.
It's amazing, because looking at these words, I have a hard time reading it.
Yeah.
But listening to you, I understood, because I speak Hebrew, I understood maybe 15% of that. But there's similarities between.
It's the same.
Hearing it, yes, but looking at this, I can't.
Looking it is not easy.
That's amazing. So that was, for me, that was very special.
In Hebrew they said Toda Rabba.
Yes, Toda Rabba. Thank you very much.
Todi Rabo.
It's very similar. Yeah. How do you say like shalom?
Shlomo.
Oh.
Shlomo, shalom.
Okay.
That's the same, yeah?
Yeah, we're brothers.
Yeah, brothers, of course.
Okay.
This is clearly an ancient church. But I'm interested in the direct connection these people claim to have with Jesus Christ himself.
This community of people who still pray and speak in Aramaic believe that the relationships of these families can be traced all the way back to Jesus Christ?
Of course, we believe that.
You do believe that?
Oh.
Because a lot of people have a relationship with Jesus through spiritual faith, but they don't claim to have a genetic link.
Of course.
You say, of course, like it's obvious, but that's amazing.
The Archbishop believes that the members of the Syriac Church are not just followers of Jesus Christ, but his descendants. If this is true, they could be the closest I'm going to get to the bloodline of Jesus.
We are from the same family, same genetic, same relationship of our Lord.
But then I want to ask you a strange question.
Yes.
Is it okay if I were to do some DNA testing on members of this community?
Of course.
I would just take a swab inside someone's cheek.
Of course, you are welcome.
Kidding, it won't hurt at all.
These DNA samples will be added to the database of Middle Eastern genetic groups that Professor Kassaman told me about. But for there to be any truth to the bloodline claimed in the Da Vinci Code, Queen Aragon would have to have one of these Middle Eastern DNA markers.
Excellent.
The big question is, does she?
Done. Thank you. Well, I have viewed artistic masterpieces, probed secret societies, and sampled royal DNA. Now it's time to take these swabs back to Western Europe and put all the pieces together.
I've been following the trail of the Da Vinci Code, trying to separate fact from fiction. I've traveled through Europe and the Middle East looking for evidence of a bloodline linking Jesus Christ with a French royal dynasty. I've tracked down the bones of a 1,400-year-old queen and looked for matching DNA evidence in the most ancient community of Christians in the world. Processing the DNA samples takes time, so I'm going to explore one last mystery while I wait for the results. According to the Da Vinci Code, a secret society, the Priory of Sion, protects the secret of the bloodline. The only evidence for the existence of this secret society is a list of its members, contained in a collection of documents called the Dossier Secret.
But what do these documents actually mean? Well, I'm now at the Bibliothèque Nationale, the French National Library, and I've just been given special permission to view them. Let's go take a look.
The Dossier Secret caused a stir when they were first made public in 1975. They became the basis for several books, including the Da Vinci Code. They're now stored away in the vaults here. But Alice Jouve has arranged for me to see them on microfiche.
These are the Dossier Secret.
Right, that is.
Where did these come from?
Well, they were deposited with the Bibliothèque Nationale in 1967.
All right. This is exciting. What does it say? Can we see?
Yeah, sure. You'll see that it's a collection of newspaper clippings, documents, letters, maps. We have a genealogy of the Merovingian line here, showing Dagobert II.
Oh, yeah, sure. This name's familiar.
He was the Merovingian king that was assassinated in 679.
Gotcha, okay.
Alice shows me that there's one genealogy charting the Merovingian line right up to the 20th century.
Wow, so this is the basis of the Da Vinci Code?
Yes, but it's all a hoax.
Wait, what do you mean?
It's all a fabrication by Pierre Plantin. No historical proof has been found that there ever existed a line from Dagobert II to today.
Wait, all of this?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All these people?
They're all made up.
Huh.
All right, what else is in this?
There's another interesting document, and this is a list of the Grand Masters of the Prior of Sion. And you'll notice there's Leonardo da Vinci here.
Oh yeah, there he is. Leonardo da Vinci, 1510, 1519. So this, at least part of the story is true.
No, nothing is true, because the Prior of Sion didn't exist until 1956.
Wait, hold on. 1956.
1956, right.
By the same person who was fabricating the genealogies.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So both of these aspects are completely fake.
Right.
In fact, Pierre Plantard, the man who created the Dossier Secret, confessed under oath in 1993 that he'd made it all up. It seems that the documentary evidence for this bloodline, as described in the Da Vinci Code, is a 20th century fake. But as we've seen, the belief that Mary Magdalene made it here to Europe has been around for centuries. I'm heading back to Leuven University in Belgium, where Professor Jean-Jacques Cassiman and his team have been analyzing the samples I've gathered.
There's still one question left to answer. Can a genetic link be made between Jesus Christ, Mary Magdalene, and their community in the Middle East, and Queen Aragon and the Merovingian dynasty? Let's go find out.
Jean-Jacques told me that this was a long shot. Extracting DNA from a 1,400-year-old bone is difficult. And when they're the bones of a queen of France, you can be sure the pressure's really on.
Thank you. So I've come to hear the news.
Okay, well, there's some good news and there's some bad news. We have examined 6 different pieces of the skeleton. And in 5 of those, we cannot use the results because either there was no DNA.
Jean-Jacques tries to find at least 2 identical DNA sequences from a skeleton as a double check. But unfortunately, he hasn't yet found 2.
But the good part is there is 1 piece, 1 bone from the foot, which gave us a very clean sequence and indications that there was quite sufficient DNA there.
This is big news, right? You get the first DNA from a Merovingian royal person.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. How does that DNA sequence compare to the sequence of Middle Eastern families?
Well, the sequence we have up to now clearly is a typical European sequence.
European and not Middle Eastern?
Definitely, it's a characteristic of European populations.
If it's European and not Middle Eastern, then the idea of a royal bloodline going from Jesus through the Merovingians into the modern day is suspect.
You'd need a miracle. It's a nice story.
It is a nice story, but I think a lot of people are hoping that there are parts of this that are just true in that divine way, and we're seeing now that the House of Cards is collapsing.
Well, science is not helping. Yeah. That's clear.
I've now learned that not only is the documentary evidence for the secret Priory of Sion a fake, but DNA science has all but discounted the possibility of a bloodline from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. The Da Vinci Code is a very clever interweaving of fantasies and legends that have evolved during the last 2,000 years, and they're sure to intrigue people for years to come. But one thing's for sure. When viewed through the eyes of history, the Da Vinci Code is more fiction than fact.